Welcome to our first CS lecture on the epic of Gilgamesh. Before we delve into this great epic, I would like to share with you a few ideas about the purpose and the importance of CS courses at the university, and then give you a brief outline of the content of these courses. I forgot to write my name on the fly sheet. My name is Hayat Al-Eid Bualuan, okay? This is a program in general education. It looks at different cultures and civilizations from the ancient and classical epochs till our contemporary world in a versatile approach to get what a university education has to be, to have a general view about various fields of knowledge, such as literature, religion, philosophy, politics, economic life, law, art, science, and others. This knowledge enables a student to understand himself, cultivate his mind, and enrich his being. In CS, we explore man's role in the universe, his ideas, beliefs, and values. It is in this sense that we read texts from different cultural and historical backgrounds in an interdisciplinary and multi-accentual approach. We introduce students to diverse worldviews and different methodological approaches that continue to have an impact on human lives. We try to understand the text in its context, to get the different meanings and messages from the text, and also to interpret and learn how to have our own opinion while understanding the different cultures. What was and what is the relation of man to himself? How did and how does man understand himself and his place in the universe? What was and what is the relation of man to his fellow men? How did and how does man enter a society? What was and what is the relation of man to nature and to the supernatural world? What was and what is the meaning of justice, liberty, love? These and other questions will be dealt with in the CS program, not with the intention of solving all the problems of the universe at the end of these courses, but to exchange ideas, relate the past to the present, dialogue with each other, tolerate different opinions, evade categorical approaches, and enrich our understanding of man and his place in the universe. The CS courses are from 201 to 208. 201 to 204 are the core courses that will lead you from late antiquity to our own time. 201 deals with ancient and classical periods. 202, the world of monotheism, reason and faith, revelation and philosophy, orthodoxy and mysticism, with a focus on the epoch spanning from the 3rd to the 13th century. 203, we reach the 17th century and the scientific revolution. It is the epoch of modernity and enlightenment, where we encounter new approaches to knowledge, morality, political system, philosophy, and others. 204 deals with the 20th century Europe and the Arab world, where we are introduced to the scientific philosophy and political ideas that are influencing our contemporary world. 205 is a combination of 201 and 202. 207 and 208 deal with specific themes. 295 deal with special topics. We come now to our lecture on the epic of Gilgamesh. Let us take 3 minutes to hear a summary of the story before we read or we discuss the context of this epic.
Hey, let me tell you all what you need to know about the Epic of Gilgamesh. The oldest story told, he was a superhuman king on a superhuman mission. He's looking for a way to nurture his condition. He had great power, let it go to his head. Took advantage of his people and let the rumor spread. The gods gone mad, he didn't follow their plan, but he was 2/3 God and 1/3 man. See, Gilgamesh had a friend, and Inkira was his name. They've caused so much trouble, but he took the blame. The gods took action, and so they blew Inkira with an awful lethal flu. On his last days alive, about the afterlife he dreamed. He told Gilgamesh about how it all seemed. Dust is their food and clay is their meat. They see no light, eternal defeat. Inkira died, and Gilgamesh kept crying that his friend was gone, he was next in line. Gilgamesh didn't want to face their brutality, so he went on a journey for immortality. He killed lions and through scorpions he passed. He walked 12 weeks of darkness, and so at last he reached the garden of gods and met with Sidore. Led to Shinabi, where he led all his fury. Destroyed the protection from the waters of death. To make up for his actions, he used all his breath to push the boat alone, and eventually they got to Utnapishtim, who they go the far away. They said their hellos, and Gilgamesh started asking, "Tell me, Utnapishtim, how your life is everlasting." Utnapishtim said, "Well, Ea saved me from a storm, making me and my wife the only living over form. We were mortals in our time past, but at the mouth of the rivers we will always last." Gilgamesh said, "What can I do to be immortal? How? There must be some kind of portal." Utnapishtim said, "Okay, let's put you to the test. Prevail against sleep for 7 nights without rest." Gilgamesh tried to stay awake, but he was too weak. He woke up, saw red, he'd been sleeping for a week. Utnapishtim said, "There's one last thing you can do. It's a mystery of the gods that I'm telling you. There's a plan underwater that will ruin your hands. Inside it, there's all what your soul demands." Gilgamesh doesn't wait, heads for his last hope. Tied heavy stones to his feet with the rope. He took the plant and held it in his own hand. He was headed on his way back to his homeland. But when Gilgamesh stopped for a cool water well, a serpent nearby sensed the sweet smell. He jumped out, taking the flower away. Gilgamesh sat down and wept in dismay. "I guess there's no use running from mortality. I guess I'm affected with normality. I'm going back to Europe to claim my glory. My immortality's within my story."
Okay, so this is a simple summary of the story. But we are going together to discover the themes, meaning, and significance of this important epic. Before we do that, let's get acquainted with the context of the story. Ancient peoples in Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia, roughly present-day Iraq and parts of northeastern Syria, a name given by the Greeks to the land between the two rivers, Tigris and the Euphrates, بلاد ما بين النهرين دجلة والفرات. This part in ancient Mesopotamia was called by its own inhabitants the land of Sumer and Akkad. On the Euphrates lies Uruk, one of the oldest cities in the Near East. Gilgamesh was a Sumerian king of Uruk. The Sumerians were the earliest settlers in Mesopotamia. Their language cannot be affiliated to any language we know. They were the first inventors of writing, cuneiform script. You will see it on the last page of your fly sheet. They wrote on clay tablets, and they were urban people who lived in fortified cities. Their land was divided into small kingdoms. Together with the Sumerians lived another group, the Akkadians, named after their city, Akkad. Their language was different from that of the Sumerians, for they spoke a language which belonged to the same linguistic family as Arabic and Hebrew, called Semitic, اللغات السامية. The Akkadians came from a different cultural backgrounds than the Sumerian backgrounds, and their peaceful cultural interaction in the area lasted for 1,000 years. The Akkadian rule was predominant in Mesopotamia in 2000 before Christ. Their language replaced the Sumerian language as both the official and the spoken language of the country. The Epic of Gilgamesh was recited for nearly 3 millennia. Modern generation came to know about Gilgamesh after the first cuneiform al-Khat al-Mismari fragments of the story were excavated in 1853 at Nineveh from the library of the last great Assyrian king Ashur-banipal, who reigned in the 7th century before Christ. From the Sumerian king list, we do know there was a historical Gilgamesh. He reigned sometime between 3000 and 2500 before Christ in the city of Uruk near the Euphrates in what is now southern Iraq. Gilgamesh became, after his death, a hero of many tales. In these tales, he is given a semi-divine and superhuman features. Several of these tales were fixed in writing in the Sumerian language. Later on, 5 came down to us as unconnected different stories about the same hero. 1,000 years after the hero's death, these tales were joined together into a literary whole written in Akkadian. The most standard version of the text is written on 12 clay tablets. The text of the standard version is partly destroyed, and some passages remain obscure. The discovery of some 50 fragments of the epic in various sites of ancient Near East enables scholars to fill some of the gaps and improve our understanding of the text. After this brief introduction to the ancient people in Mesopotamia and the background of the epic, few words about epic genre in general. Epic poetry may be defined as heroic poetry, a poetry which records the deeds of heroes. If you follow me with your fly sheet, it will be interesting for you and easier. As such, epic poetry is found in almost all great literature of the world. But epic poetry has other common characteristics. First of all, epic poetry is often found when cultures are first structured or restructured. They are often associated with the early stage of a literary tradition. Secondly, epic poetry is often a poetry of celebration. It celebrates the early deeds of individuals or tribes or peoples or cities. The Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, might just as well be called the Epic of Uruk, for it celebrates the city almost as much as its famous king. Epic poetry is proud of its ethnic identity. Thirdly, epic poetry is often backward-looking. It describes not contemporary events or reality, but looks back to heroic past, to days gone by. In Gilgamesh, we are told many times that this is a tale of long ago, a tale of ancestors and of a golden age. Epic poetry, therefore, is often an evocation of a great past, a recreation of a golden age of heroism and great human achievement. Gilgamesh and the Odyssey, which you will also be reading this semester, constitute a journey of manhood, which, through the use of various literal devices, transmit the values of their respective societies. Both stories are narrative poems about an epic journey. They make use of a storytelling trick called flashback. Flashback helps in making the story more interesting and help to draw the reader in the story. It gives an overview picture of the story. Example, the flood story in Gilgamesh. Repetition is another technique. It is used to emphasize epithets, similes, and speeches. Repetition makes the imagination open to suggestion, which can lead to an interesting implication as to the meaning of the text. It suggests a certain kind of imagery. The imagery of the forest in Gilgamesh is important. It is in the forest, a dangerous place, that he and Enkidu, validate their heroism and slay Humbaba. But why are we reading this epic today? How does Gilgamesh's quest for immortality thousands of years ago concern us today? Was Gilgamesh's failure in attaining immortality a defeat or victory? What is heroism? What is the meaning of victory? What is maturity? How can a human, in the midst of all failure and losses, still reach contentment and be at peace? What is the meaning of victory in defeat? In fact, there are many interpretations for the Epic of Gilgamesh: the psychoanalytical, the gender, the sociological, the mystical, etc. I'm going to adopt the, quote, existential, unquote, interpretation as presented by Rivka Harris, Stephen Mitchell, and others. I leave it to your professors to pursue the issue of interpretation in your classes. After all, CS is an exercise in analysis and interpretation. Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, is described at the beginning of the epic as a powerful king, endowed with human and superhuman qualities. He abuses his power in many ways. Quote, Gilgamesh sounds the tocsin for his amusement. His arrogance has no bounds by day or night. No son is left with his father. Gilgamesh takes them all, even the children. His lust leaves no virgin to her lover, neither the warrior's daughter, nor the wife of the noble. Yet, this is the shepherd of the city, wise, comely, and resolute, unquote, page 62 in your books. This is how the theme of kingship is presented at the beginning of the epic: power and mastery. Gilgamesh is abusing his subjects. There is an essential imbalance in the city. The man of unsurpassable courage has become a monster of selfishness. Enkidu, Gilgamesh's alter ego, was created as a solution to the problems brought on by Gilgamesh's extraordinary nature. He is sent on a mission from the gods who want things to get better in Uruk. How does Enkidu, the wild man, fit into the dynamic spiritual growth of the hero? Several themes come into the picture and intermingle here. Primitiveness and civilization, you'll find them on your flash sheet. Primitiveness and civilization, the power of eros, friendship, the role of women, heroism, mortality and immortality, fate and destiny, death and departure, man and the gods, and so on. In fact, I have been reading this epic for so many years. I'm not going to tell you how many years because you will know my age. And I always discover new meanings and themes. Enkidu lives and wanders in nature. He is in a state of primitiveness. A trapper sees him, tells his father, who sends him to Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh, as if he knew that Enkidu has to be tamed rather than captured, and the only way to civilize him is through the power of eros. The harlot, woman of the temple, Shamhat, leads Enkidu to self-awareness of what is a human being. She facilitates Enkidu's socialization. She taught him how to love, how to eat, how to drink and dress. She introduced him to human intercourse as such. Enkidu could no more resume his formal life. His intimacy with the woman cancels his intimacy with nature. He has been transformed. The role of the woman here, the harlot, is to teach and to lead to civilization. Enkidu's break with his formal life among wild animals is first achieved through sexual relations and is completed through learning the way of civilized life. Shamhat has the double role as a sexual creature and a maternal figure. Shamhat transformed Gilgamesh from one at home with nature and wild animals into a human being. She introduces him to civilization. This is how she accompanies him to Uruk. Having accomplished her mission, she is gone. The world of Uruk is out of balance. Gilgamesh was insisting to sleep with the bride before her bridegroom. And here Enkidu is created to restore that balance. They fought together. Enkidu is defeated. in front of Gilgamesh, but he kneels before Gilgamesh, and he acknowledges his kingship. Enkidu's acknowledgement and acceptance of the kingship of Gilgamesh is not irrelevant to his humanization. Until Enkidu comes into the city and begins life under a king, he is still not wholly removed from his original condition. Only in Gilgamesh does he find counsel, and in counsel full humanity. Enkidu now can become the friend of Gilgamesh, and the story can move to what we may call the heroic phase. There are questions here to the nature of friendship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu. I'm not going to read the questions, you will discuss them in class. Gilgamesh listens to Enkidu, his friend, interpreting dreams and advising him to deal justly with his people. But Gilgamesh is in his first heroic phase. He's arrogant, restless, anxious, and pensive at the same time. He addresses Enkidu with the following words. Allah. Gilgamesh, he wants to be famous. He wants to leave an enduring name. He's anxious. Quote, "Where is the man who can clamber to heaven? Only the gods live forever with glorious Shamash. But as for us men, our days are numbered. Our occupation is a breath of wind," unquote, page 71 in your text. Gilgamesh is afraid of death. He is restless. He is anxious. And this anxiety is leading him to mobility. Gilgamesh wants to go to the land of the cedars. Quote, "I have not established my name stamped on bricks as my destiny decreed." Therefore, I will go to the country where the cedars is felled. I will set up my name in the place where the names of famous men are written. Yet I will raise a monument to the gods. Two aspects are manifested here. Gilgamesh's pensive mood and his realization of the end of man, his desire for fame as a compensation for an imbalance in his being. The motive of this heroic journey is the desire for fame. The motive is generated by a presentiment for finality of the terminality of a human life. Now, Gilgamesh is restless because the gods in Mesopotamia do not give him security. These gods are standards of power rather than standards of goodness. Fate and destiny are indications that there is some sort of law in the universe, that we do not live in a world of change or accident. Piety and respect suggest practical knowledge of nature's power and serve to remind the human of their place in the larger scheme of things. The gods, they have a plan in the universe, and man is not allowed to break that plan. So here, Gilgamesh is not secure, he's anxious. Humbaba, the guardian of the forest. Now he wants to go to the forest. The guardian of the forest, Humbaba, is a figure of balance and a defender of the ecosystem. He is a monster, but has his appointed place in the divine order of things. Humbaba is defeated. He asks for mercy, but Enkidu persuades Gilgamesh to kill him, so Enkidu is morally responsible. Gilgamesh is now more powerful than ever, and he goes further as a mortal to reject Ishtar, the goddess of love. She proposes that she marries him, but he refused her, and he castigates her with a series of metaphors. Ishtar is infuriated. She asks her father Ainu to send the bull of heaven. Gilgamesh and Enkidu kill the bull of heaven, and the gods decide the death of Enkidu. It is a mythology, but we can derive meaning from this mythology, as we're going to see. Enkidu is now on his deathbed. He curses the harlot and the trapper, but declined when he was reminded by Shamash of the advantages of civilization. What is of utmost importance here is Enkidu's dream, not only because it reflects the Mesopotamian concept of the afterlife. What is the afterlife in Mesopotamia? But it is very significant as a dream, because Gilgamesh is going to change now after the dream. From an epic hero, he's going to remain an epic hero, of course. He's going to become a philosophical hero. He's going to start thinking about himself, his destiny, his existence, etc. Enkidu related his dream. I'm not going to read the whole dream, but I will read a few lines just to give you the idea. There is the house whose people sit in darkness. Dust is their food and clay their meat. I entered the house of dust, and I saw the kings of the earth, their crowns put away forever. This is a picture of the afterlife in Mesopotamia, a dark underworld with miserable creatures eating clay and dust, and above all, kings and ordinary people will be the same. How would the powerful and arrogant Gilgamesh react to this reality? He's going to be after death like anybody else. Gilgamesh wept. And his tears are now a beginning of a long journey towards reality. Gilgamesh now is starting to change his rebellious and arrogant attitude toward a more pensive and reflective mood. He says, quote, "Who is there in strong-walled Uruk who has wisdom like this? Strange things have been spoken. Why does your heart speak strangely? The dream is marvelous, but the terror is great. We must treasure the dream, whatever the terror, for the dream has shown that misery comes at last to the healthy man. The end of life is sorrow." Unquote, page 93 in your text. Gilgamesh started reflecting on the wisdom behind life and death. He called the dream marvelous while being aware of the terror of that reality. Gilgamesh is now not only an epic hero, but a philosophical hero as well. Enkidu dies after 12 days of agony, leaving Gilgamesh in grief. Death now is an intimate reality. It took Gilgamesh a while to acknowledge that his friend is dead. This is a tragic moment in the epic, though epics are not necessarily tragic. Death, once something to be defied, has become part of life. The proximity of death supplied the chief motive for his departure. Now, Enkidu is going to go on his second journey, and the first stage of heroism is he's arrogant, and now he's going to, little by little, to become mature. Abandoning all privileges and responsibilities, giving up his role as a warrior and king, reversing Enkidu's journey from wilderness to civilization, Gilgamesh put on animal skin and leaves Uruk. This journey is different from the previous journey. There, he returned to Uruk full of himself, thinking that he was victorious. Didn't he kill Humbaba? Didn't he kill the bull of heaven? Didn't he defy Ishtar? But that victory seemed ephemeral and superficial. Fame and glory did not stop death and the realities that one has to face in life. He felt inside him a sense of loss and bereavement, which nothing could alleviate except another journey. But this time, to seek knowledge, searching for his identity, and with it, the secret of life and death. Stripped of his ordinary surroundings, he forces himself into difficult but all right. Stripped of his ordinary surroundings, he forces himself into difficult but invigorating experience, which will make him aware of the reality of his existence. Gilgamesh is anxious, roaming the wilderness, asking, quote, "Must I die too?" unquote. This is not a rhetorical question. He really does not know the answer anymore. It is the question of a child at the threshold of adult awareness who is now faced with the concept of dying. Gilgamesh is still in his period of bereavement. The death of Enkidu induced him to depart in search for himself, for his identity. He separates himself from society and journeys to regions far removed from ordinary human life. Gilgamesh is suffering, facing changes that will strip, reduce, and waste him. So this is the second journey. Gilgamesh crosses many gates and thresholds in his journey to Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim is the only man who was given immortality. And Gilgamesh wants to ask him about the secret of immortality. He wants to be immortal. After all, he is 2/3 God and 1/3 human being. At the gate of the scorpion, he met the scorpion. You have the stages. It's on your flash sheet. I marked all the stages. First of all, he sees the scorpion. He tells his story. He's the same thing, repeats. He is grieved. His friend is dead, and he wants to search for Utnapishtim to question him about the living and the dead. The man scorpion allows him to pass through the mountain of Meshu. Leaving this world behind, he crosses 11 leagues of darkness before he could see the sun in the 12th league. This is a journey of a soul to find the truth. It exemplifies death and rebirth. Shamash, he meets Shamash, God. Shamash in the garden of the gods. Shamash told him, quote, "You will never find the life for which you are searching." But Gilgamesh wanted to go on. It was then his encounter with Siduri, the woman of the vine. This is very important encounter because at the end, Gilgamesh is going to go back to what Siduri told him. So Siduri barred her door, and Gilgamesh was furious, and he moved in. And he told her, quote, "Young woman, maker of wine, why do you bolt your door? What did you see that made you bar your gate? I am Gilgamesh, who seized and killed the bull of heaven. I killed the watchman of the cedar forest. I overthrew Humbaba, who lived in the forest, and I killed the lions in the passes of the mountain." Unquote, page 100 to 101. You see, he's so arrogant. And Siduri brought him back to himself and his limits as a human. She said, quote, "If you are that Gilgamesh, why are your cheeks so starved? And why is your face so drawn? Why is despair in your heart and your face like the face of one who has made a long journey? Yes, why is your face burned from heat and cold? And why do you come here wandering over the pastures in search of the wind?" Unquote, page 101 in your text. So Gilgamesh came back to himself, and he answered, quote, "And why should not my heart be starved and my face drawn? Despair is in my heart, and my face is the face of one who made a long journey." He speaks about the death of Enkidu and that he wanted to look for Utnapishtim. Siduri, another woman in the epic, is represented as a supportive figure who assists Gilgamesh in his dangerous journey to find Utnapishtim after offering him a piece of advice. What she says deserves special attention. Her discourse is realistic. She stresses the goodness of food, cleaning, clothing, and importance of wife and child. She upholds the social norms of Mesopotamian society. A wise woman speaking in proverbial language. She says, quote, "Gilgamesh, where are you hurrying to? You will never find the life for which you are looking. When the gods created man, they allotted to him death, but life they retained in their keeping. As for you, Gilgamesh, fill your belly with good things day and night, night and day, dance and be merry, feast and rejoice. Let your clothes be fresh, bath yourself in water, cherish the little child that holds your hand, and make your wife happy in your embrace, for this too is the lot of man." Unquote, page 102 in your text. Siduri's advice is not only realistic and a simple call for pleasure, but she's advising him to come to terms with death and life at the same time. In this way, Siduri acknowledges Gilgamesh's struggle with grief, his confused identification of death and life, and is helping him to disentangle life from the dead and go back to the world and enjoyment of living. Siduri guides him to Urshanabi, the ferryboat man, who will in his turn take him to Utnapishtim. Gilgamesh's last chance is in front of Utnapishtim, who transmits to him the story of the flood and his immortality. This is a secret knowledge, not accessible to anyone, but only to this hero, who was 2/3 God and 1/3 human being. Gilgamesh heard the secret of Utnapishtim. About now the difference in the flood between Gilgamesh and in the Old Testament, I'm sure you'll discuss it in your classes. There's a difference between monotheism and polytheism. Gilgamesh heard the secret of Utnapishtim's immortality. He had questions to ask, and Utnapishtim proved to him that he does not have the stuff of immortality. He challenged him to be awake for 7 days, but Gilgamesh failed the test. Utnapishtim then gave him his last chance. Listen carefully now. He guided him to a magical plant that will restore him to youth. Gilgamesh plunges into the great deep, finds the plant, and brings it to the surface. He calls the plant, speaking to Urshanabi, quote, the antidote to the fear of death. He was so happy. He wants to take the plant to his people for the benefit of the whole community. Is this a beginning of change in Gilgamesh? On his way back to Uruk, Gilgamesh baths in a pond, leaving the plant on the ground. A snake ate the plant. An innocent snake who took advantage of the opportunity. Gilgamesh sat down and wept. The tears ran down his face, and he took the hand of Urshanabi, quote, "O Urshanabi, was it for this that I toiled with my hands? Is it for this I have wrung out my heart's blood? For myself I have gained nothing, not I, but the beast of the earth has joy of it now. I found a sign, and now I have lost it. Let us leave the boat on the bank and go." Unquote, page 117. So he wants to go back to his city. This is, alas, the last gasp of tragedy. The loss of the plant stands for the loss of the illusion that one can conquer the hidden forces in the universe or go back to being a child. It brings home the necessity for growing up, for facing and accepting reality. Gilgamesh is now with the realization that even though he is 2/3 God to 1/3 human, it is his human third that controls his destiny. Alas, there is no immortality and no return to youth. Is Gilgamesh defeated? How can one lose and still be victorious? He didn't get immortality. Gilgamesh realizes that he cannot come against his destiny, but he can live well, having received the critical faculty of moral discernment. True, it is a dead end, but there is a way not to submit and to continue. He can choose either to sink in despair or transcend his weakness and leap to real freedom. Yes, freedom from anxiety and restlessness. The perfection of Gilgamesh's knowledge is attained when he discards his self, the death of which is inevitable, and perceives that only his accomplishments will remain. True, Gilgamesh fails to win immortality, but his travels have the desired effect. He is reduced to a level coherent with the precincts of the city, and he is made wise. Gilgamesh's epic is a portrait of a hero's transition from the arrogance of youth to a devastated feeling of loss at the death of a friend, moving to a sense of bereavement and existential anxiety, and lastly, leaping to wisdom and real maturity to understand that real victory is when one grows up spiritually. Gilgamesh realized that he cannot be the master of his destiny and that he has to leap to a new life. This maturity enabled Gilgamesh to turn his defeat into victory when he learned to see himself not as most powerful of men, but as part of a larger whole ruled by forces beyond his power to control. Rather than challenge his limitations, he must learn to accept them. Maturity requires humility and acceptance. The story of Gilgamesh is the story of every human being as he traverses the narrow paths of his existence. Strong in his youth, as you are now, a human being thinks that he encompasses the universe. Then frustration of all sorts occur. And as a result, is saddened by the disillusionment in his life. It is man's realism, wisdom, and moral discernment that will turn his failure to victory. This is how, looking on, let us think about some abiding problems. How can we live at peace with what is, letting go of what we wish would be? How can we learn to accept death as part of life? How can we be defeated and victorious at the same time? Quote, he was wise, he saw mysteries and knew secret things. He brought us a tale before the flood. He went on a long journey, was weary, worn out with labor. Returning, he rested. He engraved on a stone the whole story. Page 117 in your text. O Gilgamesh, Lord of Kulab, great is thy praise. Thank you for your attention.